6. It's 5 a.m. again, and I'm up way too early, so it is what it is. This damn iPhone, no matter how full it is when you go to bed, it'll be empty when you get up. It drives me nuts having to put this thing on a charger every single damn night. But it's iPhone. I made the mistake of buying it. I will have to suffer through it. I'm looking for. Sorry, I'm got my computer fired up looking for something there. I can't find it, of course. And I made a mistake before I went to bed last night. I was listening to a bunch of vlogs and went to bed with those on my mind, and it's kind of funny to me how all these vlogs will kind of line up in their or their topics, right? They'll all kind of just line up, right? They'll all talk about very similar things, and it seems kind of random, but it's just line up. Right? Over time, it happens so often it can't really be random. I don't really know how to explain that, but the current topic going around is, you shouldn't listen to anybody. You shouldn't listen to people. You shouldn't, don't care what trolls say. Don't care this. Don't care that. Chat options. I don't think I've seen this before. Of course, it's hiding behind the hide all chat, live chat. I think we want live chat. Welcome to live chat. There we go. Yeah, I think, anyway, I have another thought on that. But, it was funny to me how these guys are going on and on and on about don't listen to anybody, just, don't care what anybody thinks and this and this and that. And it goes back to a conversation I was having with a young lady about cultures recently. Got into a really deep conversation at a really strange place. But we were talking about different cultures around the world and which cultures are better and worse. And it all started with which immigrants in America seem to do the best or do the worst. And hey, good morning, McLovin. I'm just ranting here for about 30 minutes. So this girl and I were talking about which cultures do the best. And then I was kind of pushing and diving down, like, why do you think those cultures do better? And she was from Nigeria, and Nigerians in America do really well, like really well. And so she was telling me about growing up in Nigeria and how the family is a really big deal. And then you go to someplace like the Philippines. It's not the best culture in the world, but it's a pretty good culture. I like it. I enjoy it. There's, it's like I said, it's not the best, but again, family is really very big. And then I go to Malaysia, and the areas I was in Malaysia, it was kind of hard to meet like local Malaysians, but the Malaysians I did meet, the born and raised Malaysians, family is huge there. Family is a very big issue, very big deal. I go to Japan, family is not just family, but community. And, they have this thing, um, I'm probably going to screw this up, and I apologize because I'm going off a 2-year-old memory. That was, anyway, the sun is always watching or something. I can't remember what the saying was, but basically, the thought in the culture, in bred in, or not bred in, but baked into the culture. Hey, good morning, Ray. The thought baked into the culture in Japan was somebody's always watching, and act as if somebody's always watching. So, and I can go on and on, like Albania, same thing, right? Albania is the biggest. Yeah, of course, McLovin. So, yeah, they're not afraid to take advantage of a sucker. But Albania culture is very family culture is very big too, and like Tirana, the capital, I think of that as the biggest small town you'll ever visit because there is no degrees of separation. So you may not know the person walking down the street, but he knows somebody who knows somebody you do. So like, you know, 2 degrees or 4 degrees, however you want to count that. But there's really, you know, no real separate degrees of separation. If you go back to the Kevin Bacon game, because everybody knows everybody, or they know somebody who knows you. So, again, family is very important. So when I listen to these, you know, YouTubers and vloggers, they're like, no, you don't listen to trolls and you don't listen to that. Now, I'm of the opinion if it's an ad hominem attack, just like, go away, right? But if you're not going to listen to people, you're going to end up, running around with a camera filming girls on the street for, chuckleheads on YouTube or worse, right? Or worse. Like that would be, a not so bad in the realm of, how you can spiral when you start tuning out voices. That's not so bad. But, you know, I once said I've never, I've eaten out of a trash can because I was hungry and homeless, but I've never fallen so low as to run around the streets of a foreign country filming the local girls for chuckleheads to enjoy their personal time to on the internet. Uh, and that's because I have a little self respect. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, McLovin. I haven't been to Ireland. I've met a few Irish people. Uh, I met a couple from Scotland uh, when it was not Ireland proper, but it was interesting having that conversation. I'd love to go to Ireland. Um, but my opinion is if it's an ad hominem attack, yeah, dismiss it and block the person. But if you're going to not listen to people as you get older and just kind of burrow in, then you've closed your mind. And to me, like, yeah, Ireland's definitely on the list. It's pricey right now. It's really pricey. But you're going to close your mind, and to me, that's the worst thing that can happen when, as I get older, is I never want to stop challenging my ideas. I never want to stop challenging my thought processes. I never want to, because part of that challenging is keeps you alive vibrantly and keeps you, you know, your brain active. Digging into the corners and hey, I thought this for 30 years and now it's wrong. I mean, Pluto was a planet, right? I mean, come on, what happened? You and hey, trust the science. You know, but if you're not questioning and you know, it's just another step closer to that permanent chair on the porch. And I don't want to, I want to avoid that permanent chair on the porch as long as I can. Eventually I'm going to get there, but why rush to go sit down and start rotting and growing roots, right? Um, yeah, and fortunately, most of it stopped. I mean, I don't watch a lot of it, McLovin, but um, you know, I'm glad I don't have to be the bearer of bad news for some people. Um, but yeah, when you put up a screenshot of a lady you don't know, nice. I didn't know that about New Zealand and penguins. But when you put up a screenshot of a lady you don't know and call her a prostitute on your thumbnail, uh, yeah, you better be careful. She may have friends, and those friends may not take kindly to it. Um, but some people made that mistake, and fortunately, they didn't learn the lesson the hard way. But anyway, yeah, I just think it was interesting listening to all these people before I went to bed. It was like the wrong stuff to have on before I went to bed, but everybody was just talking, don't listen to people, don't listen to people. And I'm of the exact opposite. Obviously I dismiss. Actually, the Trike Mafia won't. The Trike Mafia is a uh, bunch of dudes sitting around drinking, being lazy. There are some good trike drivers out there, but what I noticed is most of them are just sitting around doing nothing all day. They've got no hustle. They've got no backbone. They're just you know taking the path of least resistance. Um, you know, they don't know any better. They don't see the upside in working. And that's where I was. The real gift of my childhood was my friends had things. Yeah, exactly. My friends had things growing up that my parents just couldn't afford. So the real gift was I learned to go to work so I could afford those little things I wanted. And um, I worked really hard as a young man, and I discovered as a young man that the more I worked, the more I could have, and and that was really probably the best lesson of my childhood. At 10 or 11 years old, I was working, and that taught me, hey, if I want to have an ice cream and a piece of pie or pizza pie, you know, I could go work and I could afford to buy those things. Um, and even at 10, 12 years old, I've found people that would put me to work. And that was, you know, a good thing. It was a good thing for me. It was a good thing for everybody, right? But we don't do that anymore. But circling back to the whole friends thing, it's interesting. The friends I had that didn't work, they learned the hard way. Some of them learned really quickly, but some didn't. And, I go back to what would my life be if I didn't listen to friends, if I didn't listen to strangers. If you're going to walk around with the attitude that you're right and somebody didn't, see something or say something, where does that leave you? In fact, I should do a whole video apologizing. That I was starting to read and then it's gone. Yeah, I don't view everyone as my equal at all. Um, I will listen if it's, but how much weight I give comments or feedback from strangers is very, very different. Um, yeah, now I understand like comments when two or more people drop a comment, they just shoot by. Um, yeah, people can be disrespectful if you view everyone as your equal as far as deserving respect and understanding, then it will happen. Um, I've been a heavy equipment operator for 35 years. I'd like to pass on the skills. That'd be awesome, especially heavy equipment. Um, you could, I don't know, heavy equipment is. I worked for a summer hand in hand with a backhoe operator as the shovel guy, and boy, that is a skill and a talent. And you know, if you want to make money, go buy a backhoe and just start doing jobs. I mean, I watched a guy, um, my friend's husband and soon to be ex, right? He took a business and just hard work, right? Just out there grinding. But he started with a piece of heavy equipment. You know, I think he started with a backhoe and then went to added a dozer, added a scooper, added a bucket, added all kinds of things. Yeah, exactly right. Uh, but yeah, if you want to really make money, man, getting into running a piece of heavy equipment, if you become an owner operator and he started having people work for him, he's teaching them, and it was amazing like how much money he generated, how much work he got done. I mean, He was just a grinder. But that's a skill set that, you know. And the screwy thing is, I had an opportunity to learn it when I was younger. And I was like, I don't want to be sitting on my ass all day. And I really didn't realize how hard of the work it really is. And, um, 6 hours of work there, I could have made more money than 10 hours of work doing what I was doing. So um, that would have given me a lot more free time to go do the fun things in life that I wanted to do. So missed opportunities. But yeah, I just wanted to, it's 5 a.m. I just wanted to get on here and rant a little bit about, you know, I don't ever want to be the guy who doesn't listen to strangers. I will weigh their comments and their criticisms appropriately, but, uh, you know, the idea that, nobody but your close friends are right, and who are your close friends? And one thing that kind of struck me, uh, nice. Yeah, I was one of those laborers for a while. Um, and I enjoyed that. It was good, fun work. But the thing that really struck me is, who are your friends? And this goes back to a theme that has been, forefront on my mind in the last 5, 6 years. Yeah. So, oh, they never will, McLovin. They never will. They never will. That once you have that entitlement bug, it's so hard to lose. I know people that go back and forth to third world countries, and they think the third world countries are better because they get free health care there, and they just don't. Um, and they still want a higher minimum wage, and they want this and they want that, and you know, I knew as a child that if you want minimum wage, you're a sucker. If you're not willing to work harder than the guy next to you. But I viewed every job as a privilege, as a gift, as a thank you, sir, for giving me work. Not with any sort of thing, but uh, let me circle back to this. Who you listen to has been a theme on my mind for a good 5, 6, 8 years. And it goes all the way back to my childhood. I always said if you want to be a race car driver, hang out with race car drivers. I was told that at an early age, like pre-high school, and it just stuck with me. If you want to be a cop, you hang out with cops. You want to be a fireman, you hang out with firemen. You want to be a crackhead smoking in the park, living under a tree, just go to the park, start hanging out. You'll end up living there. It's just the way it works. And so, when I watch these YouTubers, pontificate, and I just looked that word up. That doesn't mean what I thought it meant. When you watch these YouTubers ramble on about, um, don't listen to people, don't listen to people, don't listen to people. I know it's all in context or in perspective. Um, yeah, but even in other cultures, you want to associate with the right people because um, every culture is a reflection of humanity in that sense. Um, but I noticed very very strong. Hey, good morning, Jamie. I noticed very significantly in the last 5 years how much I hang out and listen to people who it's not so much who I consider my best friend, but people who I listen to have the biggest impact on my life. And, it's so important to be very scrutinizing and not totally disassociate or be rude to people. But at the same time, I don't, even if I like somebody, I'm not going to just open up my ears and my time to them because I don't necessarily want what they want in life. So if I'm not going the same direction as them, I don't want to spend a ton of time with them. I don't want them to become one of my dominant voices in my head. Um, and maybe I'm more pliable than other people, but I do see that who you surround yourself with. Yeah, exactly. Who you surround yourself with, both physically and digitally, you know, matters significantly. And so when I look at these um, case studies of people on YouTube, who's doing better, who's doing worse, who's doing this, who's doing that. So like um, Old Dog talks about, how he's got this tight group of men he hangs out with, and how, he's very thankful for having that tight group of friends that he trusts. And so we don't see that. We see a little bit of the interactions, but we don't see that. And so it's easy to hypothesize what's going on there or not. But, as far as successful expats online, um, I would rank him pretty high in the YouTubers as far as their successful retirements. He seems to be living the life he wants to live and very happy with it. And that's kind of the goal, right? Is what do I want out of life, and how do I get there? And ironically, the hardest part is not how do I get there; it's the what do I want. So I don't know. It's just a lot of interesting thoughts spinning through my head at 5 a.m. And the big one is, I totally disagree with people. I think you need to, when I look at all the cultures around the world and I look at all the successful people around the world, they do listen to others. They do care what others think. And I think when you stop caring what others think, you end up doing things that, just spiral down into a negative cycle. And that negative cycle, it's easy to spiral down. It's hard to stop once you start falling. And it's really hard to hit bottom and come up. The best thing you can do when you're spiraling is just stop everything, and I've spiraled down a few times, and I noticed, hanging out and living on the streets and hanging out with other homeless people, the spiral is almost impossible to stop. Once you start losing, it's almost impossible to stop. And whether it's emotional, physical, or financial, the hardest thing is to stop and then realize that, hey, part of the reason I spiraled is because of all the people in my circle. So reassessing and going, okay, I need new voices in my head. I need to change my location. Yeah, that's a really good point, Ray. Um, but by changing location and changing voices in my head, my life goes up and down. And, um, you know, I don't know. I don't know what that says about me or what that says about life, but I do know if you want to make changes, the best thing you can do is start adding new voices to your head, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a friend, whether it's, random people on the street. Um, I listened to Patrick Bet David for a few years now, and his old videos, he used to say when he was coming up, he would go and just sit at a coffee shop like once a month and to find the best hotel in the area and go buy that $20 cup of coffee. And, I thought that was an interesting perspective. And he would go to the Ferrari dealer once a year. He wanted a Ferrari. So he would go to the Ferrari deal once a year and sit there and, enjoy the idea of sitting in a Ferrari. And finally, one year he went back and bought it. But, I don't know. It's interesting to me, watching these people go on and on and on. Don't listen to strangers. When all the evidence I can find says the more you listen to strangers, the better you end up doing in life. If you're listening to the right strangers, if you're listening to the right input, if you're filtering it correctly. If you're not filtering it correctly, then yeah, you're going to spiral down. So there's a lot of Instagram memes and posts and things that come to mind, but beautiful beach. That works for about, that works for a few months. Uh, and then you get bored, and then you realize that, idle hands are the devil's playground, and you better have something to do. You better have a plan on what you're going to do, because if you don't have a plan, that's when things go sideways. Uh, that's just my experience. But having a plan to stay busy, a plan to stay active, and a plan to interact with people, makes life go a lot easier. Yeah. The hard part, I think, as I get older, Jamie, is finding that circle that is going in the same place I am. I know a lot of great people. I'm friends with a lot of great people, but um, their futures and my futures, the Venn diagram keeps pulling apart, right? Keeps the circles keep pulling apart, and we get less and less in that Venn diagram. So, that's the key too. I think is keeping that circle of friends and keeping grounded with them. But anyway, it's been about a half hour. I just wanted to come on here and say, do listen to people, do listen to strangers, seek their input, uh, you know, seek their, but don't, if it's negative and it's a correctable, look in the mirror. The, the thing I took, I'll get out of here on this thought. The thing I took away the most is when you stop, uh, yeah, exactly, McLovin. uh, that's too funny. Yeah, the problem is I'm the type of guy, I won't lend you the shovel. I'll come use it. um, but the thing I took away the most when all these people say, uh, you know, don't listen to people, don't listen to people. They're just saying, I'm done, I'm tired, I'm gonna sit in that chair on the porch, and I don't want to sit in that. I don't, like I said before, I want to avoid that final sit before as long as I can. Um, so don't close your minds. Always be open to look in the mirror and admit or assess whether or not you were wrong for the last 20 years on that topic. Always having that open door to the mind to question everything I've known. You know, helps keep me looking into the corners and helps keep me active and meeting new people. Yeah, I ended up not going to Dubai. My plans fell through. That's a story for another day. So no 17-layer cake, but it is almost time for coffee. So I'm gonna punch out. Thank you all for stopping by. I hope you guys have a great day, and hopefully there's tacos somewhere, like soon. I need some tacos. Take care.